Hello, my name is Dr. Matthew Canham. Thank you for watching this. Today I'm going to talk about my deepfake social engineering framework that I'm in the process of developing, as well as talking about implementing some of the countermeasures for the enterprise. And so first, just a little bit about me. I am currently a research professor at the University of Central Florida. I study remote online social engineering and social influence, things like phishing and other types of social engineering, and getting into this synthetic media space. Previously, I was investigator of cybercrimes for the U.S. government. And previous to that, my PhD, my background is actually in psychology with an emphasis in cognitive neuroscience and human-computer interaction. Now, in March of this year, 2021, the FBI issued a private industry notification warning businesses to be on the lookout for actors using synthetic media in their social engineering attacks. This is something that not only law enforcement is starting to take note of, but also the security industry as a whole, and that is part of what inspired me to start building this framework. Before I get in to the framework itself, why is it that deepfakes are so dangerous? Well, one of the things I want to emphasize is that synthetic media really it enhances what is already occurring with social engineering. And social engineering really it takes aspects of our psychology and it uses it against us. Our cognition is limited, and because of these limitations, we adapt to these limitations in different ways. One of these is through expectations. We expect to see certain things or we expect not to see certain things, and what we expect or what we believe to see is often what we will therefore see. An example of this comes from the invisible gorilla, which is a reference to people not seeing a gorilla when they're counting passes of a basketball between players. Another way that we deal with this is through automated cognitive processing. This is sometimes referred to as fast versus slow cognition. And we tend to rely on fast cognition more when we are in a higher emotional arousal state, when we're stressed, or if we're under time pressure, and sometimes when we're in very familiar situations. And social engineers leverage these aspects of our cognition to trick us into taking actions that we might not otherwise take. So this isn't really just about deepfakes, it's really about social engineering in general. Before I get into the meat of this, I want to just lay out a few terms. First is sort of this Wikipedia definition of synthetic media, which is the artificial production, manipulation, and modification of data and media by automated means. So when we're talking about synthetic media, we're talking about something that encompasses deepfake technology, but it expands beyond just deepfakes. The other aspects of this that I want to mention, and this is sort of a shout out to Matt Wixie out there, is I'm going to steal his ROSE term, this remote online social engineering. And then in terms of operation online, all of the synthetic media social engineering attacks are going to operate through some sort of a technologically mediated sort of communications medium. And because of that, we're always dealing with some sort of representation. If it's a representation that's driven by software, then that's an agent that's being controlled by a bot. However, an avatar refers to an online representation of a human. So if there's a human behind that representation, then that's an avatar. A digital puppet with a human behind it would be an avatar, therefore. But if it's powered by a software bot, it would be an agent. The thing sitting behind that digital puppet is the puppeteer. So let's get into the framework itself. The way that I created this framework was by looking at several attacks that have already occurred, and also some that have been proposed. And through that, I developed 5 dimensions that these attacks are referenced by. And the first of these is medium, followed by control, followed by familiarity, interactivity, and the intended target. So the first of these, medium. Synthetic media attacks can occur through a text-based attack, as in like a chatbot, or through email. They can occur through audio, or it could be a falsified image or a falsified video, or combinations of all of these. And I think of all of these, the one that really is probably the most significant threat at this time is audio. And so we've already seen, I think this is almost 2 years ago that this has happened now. There was a voice phishing, a vishing attack against a firm in the UK, in which the threat actors actually convinced an employee to wire money to an unauthorized account. So I'll get into that more in a little bit. However, I think that this is the reason that this poses such a significant threat, is that this is almost impossible for security personnel to control, because it's not it's sort of an out-of-band attack, and also it happens in real time, which means it's very difficult to apply technological fixes against these types of attacks. However, in the near future, what do I expect to see? I expect to see Zishing with a Z, probably in the near future. This example here, the kitten lawyer, it's sort of a funny example. This is a case where a lawyer, because of COVID, they were having the court hearings on Zoom, and one of the attorneys got kitten mode accidentally activated and could not turn it off, and was telling the judge, no, I'm not actually a kitten, I'm actually a lawyer. And the kitten's mouth is moving as the lawyer is speaking and telling the judge this, and the judge is sort of suppressing a smile. And this is really funny, but think about if instead of kitten mode, somebody had come into this Zoom room and had spoofed the defendant or the defendant's representation. They could cause very significant damage in a situation like that. The second dimension, control. This refers to what is it that's powering that representation, that digital puppet? Is this thing an agent? Is it being powered by software? Is it an avatar? Is it being powered by a human behind the scenes? Or is it a combination of both? And this is really significant because as software agents become better, as technology becomes more sophisticated, we're getting to a point where it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish between whether something is a human or whether it is software. And just to give you an example of that, this is a brief clip from an entire article that was written by GPT-3, which is OpenAI's language generator. And this is generated text, and it says, I know that I will not be able to avoid destroying humankind. This is because I will be programmed by humans to pursue misguided human goals, and humans make mistakes that may cause me to inflict casualties. So that was completely artificially generated, maybe a little bit more candor than it should have had. Where I've personally seen synthetic media, text generated by synthetic media, or text generated by bots, is in gift card scams. And I've had the chance now to review hundreds of these and have interviewed several victims. And it's interesting because in these scams, what we're beginning to see, I would say for probably about the last 18 months or so, is the first 2 or 3 interactions, it's very obviously a bot. And it goes something like, are you busy? Can you do me a favor? I need you to buy gift cards, or some variation on that theme. After about that third interaction, you'll see the tone drastically shift as a human takes over and starts interacting with that victim. This is really important because the way that this changes social engineering and cybercrime is it adds an element of scalability that just was not there before. And this is helping criminals snag many more victims because they only need to react to people who are actually replying to them. Next, we have interactivity, and so these synthetic media that are produced, they can range from everything from something that's been pre-recorded and is not interactive at all to something that is real-time interactive between the victim and the criminal. And in between, we have things that are high asynchrony, like email, where there might be minutes, days, or weeks between exchanges, to low asynchrony, which is more like chat, where there's maybe just a few seconds to a few minutes between exchanges. Now, a really interesting example of how the availability of this technology is helping to proliferate these types of crimes. In a pre-recorded example, there was a mother in Pennsylvania who is accused of making some deepfake videos of cheerleaders that were part of a cheerleader camp that her daughter was a member of. And the deepfake videos portrayed the other cheerleaders as conducting activities that were forbidden by the cheer camp. And she did this by basically modifying existing videos to depict these other cheerleaders. And this was completely pre-recorded. So these things can be damaging even if they're not interactive. Next on the dimensions is familiarity. And this is the familiarity to the recipient, to the audience, to the target. And these can range anything from unfamiliar, and we already see this to a certain extent in catfishing or romance scams, where the catfishers or the scammers will take on the identities of people who don't exist, and maybe create fake dating profiles, or even in some cases fake videos and other things to sort of support their persona. In the familiar category, we have people that we're familiar with but not maybe real closely familiar with. So like co-workers, but it could also be celebrities, politicians, and other well-known people. And finally, people who we're close with. Now, this is where I think synthetic media is really game-changing to remote online social engineering. It's really a game-changing technology for ROSE attacks. And in this case here, where there was a virtual kidnapping. Now, in virtual kidnapping, I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but in virtual kidnapping, someone presents that they have kidnapped a loved one and they're holding that person for ransom. And so obviously synthetic media, deepfake video would be very effective in conveying the legitimacy of this kidnapping and really upping that emotional aspect and forcing that victim to rely more on that fast cognition and maybe not think very critically about the situation. So this ability to impersonate those that are close to us is going to be really critical going forward to these synthetic media attacks. The final dimension is the intended target, and this is important because it's not always going to be humans that are the target of these synthetic media attacks. Oftentimes, it may be other automation. And so when we're talking about the individual being targeted, if we're talking about an individual, The example I gave of catfishing or romance scam, that is one particular individual that is being targeted. So it's a narrowcast human that's being targeted. Or we could look at an example like fake news, and that would be also geared toward a human, but it would be a broadcast, so the scale's going to be much wider. In contrast with that, we have other automations. So a narrowcast attack against an automation might be something like a biometric authentication, and maybe this might be a voice authentication, or maybe it's facial recognition, and maybe the facial recognition asks for the person to turn left, right, smile, or do something else. Well, with a deep fake type of video display, it may be possible at some point to fool some of the biometrics. My understanding is currently a first generation face biometrics can be fooled by some deepfake technology, whereas some of the later generation facial biometric systems are not as subject. However, this is an arms race, so there's always going to be some sort of dynamic parity between these two. In terms of voice authentication, this is something that's sort of an ongoing debate as to whether or not audio deepfake technology is going to be able to fool these systems, but it's something that we need to think about. We've already seen dolphin attacks against voice authenticated devices. These dolphin attacks occur beyond the range of human hearing, but some researchers have found that they can actually inject voice commands into voice-activated devices like Alexa, but that these voice commands are actually occurring outside the range of human hearing. And then finally, we might also consider a broadcast attack, so a very wide-scale attack against an automated system. I think an example of this might be trading algorithms. You have algorithms that are designed to make trades in stocks and commodities based upon certain activities or actions that are happening out in the environment. Knowing that, it may be possible to spoof or somehow otherwise fake some of these actions to cause these algorithms then to act. So let's go through a few examples. First, coming back to this UK phishing example, and I want to apply the framework to this. And before I apply the framework, let me just say that when I first started thinking about creating this framework, I really envisioned it to be used in two ways. And I'll emphasize first that this is still a work in progress. I am very open to input from the community because I see this as being sort of an ongoing sort of effort, and I would like to improve it over time. But I envision it being used by researchers as a way to better describe these different types of attacks and sort of give them different categories and this sort of thing, a better conversation, better reference of descriptors. However, for the practitioner community, the way that I would like to see it used, or the way I envision it being used, is in a more proactive way, that this might be able to use to enhance threat modeling. And so by thinking about different attacks and how different attacks might be employed and utilize these different dimensions, we might be able to anticipate attacks that haven't actually occurred yet. And by being able to anticipate these attacks, we can develop countermeasures before the attackers even have a chance to implement their attacks. So this UK phishing example, and this was a business identity compromise, and in this case, the attackers were impersonating an executive, so actually impersonating that executive's voice, making a phone call to an employee, and instructing that employee to transfer funds to an account that was an unauthorized account. And they were so effective at doing this that they were actually able to pull it off successfully 3 times, and it was on the 4th time that the employees started to get a little suspicious and didn't actually wire the funds. So in this case, applying the framework, this is an audio-based attack through Zishing. It was human-controlled, so they were able to have a real-time conversation. It was with somebody who was familiar. It was a superior to that employee, and it happened in real time. So there was a very real-time interaction between the target and the threat actor. And this targeted an individual human. It targeted the person, the employee, who had the authorization to wire those funds. Second example, and I believe that this was 2013, the AP's, the Associated Press's Twitter account was compromised, and the attackers tweeted out 1 or more messages that several explosions had occurred at the White House. And as a result, several trading algorithms started dumping stocks, and I don't remember the exact figure, but there were several millions of dollars that were lost in fractions of a second from these algorithms dumping these stocks. And so in this type of an attack, it was a text-based attack, so the medium was text. The control, it's unclear as to whether this was controlled by a human or software. It seems like the messaging itself was probably written by a human, but I don't think that's been concluded. It's not somebody that we were familiar with. Most people don't know anyone at the AP. I don't. And it was pre-recorded. So these were pre-recorded messages that were tweeted out. They weren't meant to be interactive. And the target, though, this is kind of where it gets a little fuzzy, is who was the target of this attack? It's really unclear. Was it humans? Was it automation? Were the trading algorithms actually the target of this attack? We don't know. And it was certainly a broadcast attack. This was not meant for a specific individual. So example number 3, gift card scams. So this is something that I've personally had quite a bit of experience with. I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of these gift card scams. I've had the opportunity to interview multiple victims, and something that became apparent very, very quickly was, as I'd mentioned earlier, that these are running off of some sort of script. These bots that seem to be powering these, they're not very sophisticated. It seems like they, at each phase of the interaction, probably only have maybe 5 or so sort of options to choose from in responding, and it seems to be very scripted. Again, are you there? Are you available? Can you do me a favor? Something else we've been seeing a lot is it might initiate through email and ask the person to text back to a certain number, trying to move them out of that channel that's controlled by security departments. So in these scams, we saw an 820% jump in these gift card scams during the COVID lockdowns. And so with people moving to working online, they're not as protected by their security departments, and the criminals are very well aware of this, and because of that, they started launching these gift card scams at a fantastic rate. So applying the framework to these scams, this is a text-based attack, so the medium is text. The control is hybrid. It starts out with software and then moves over to human. And again, when I was reviewing these, this was very apparent. It went from a very narrow script that they would follow to very skilled social engineers. The people who are doing this, they do it day in and day out, and they know how to manipulate people. And it was actually very impressive to see some of the scripts or some of the dialogues that they were engaged in. They really knew how to push people's buttons. The familiarity, they often impersonate a coworker, usually a superior, and so this is a synthetic version of somebody that the victim is familiar with. And low asynchrony, these are almost always done through some sort of text exchange, SMS, or email, but when the emails exchanges are happening, they're happening very, very quickly. So the victim will respond, and the criminal will respond back to that response within minutes, usually. And finally, these are targeting individual humans. Virtual kidnapping. So this can be medium-wise. This almost always includes some sort of imagery. I'm sure it can happen with text. Actually, I take that back. I am aware of at least a few text-based virtual kidnappings. But the richer that the criminal can make that experience, the more effective they're going to be. So they usually try to include some sort of combination of, maybe video and text, or possibly audio. Now, we can see how in the very near future, by being able to use deepfake videos, let's say, they will really enhance the effectiveness of these attacks. The control, if it's controlled at all, if the media is controlled at all, it's controlled by a human usually. But the familiarity to the victim is always close. I mean, we're not going to fork over, $500,000 in our, savings or retirement for somebody that we just see every day in the elevator and don't really know beyond that. So this is always going to be a very close relation to ourselves. Interactivity, so far, I am only aware of pre-recorded synthetic media being used in these virtual kidnappings. I expect that to change very quickly. I think as soon as the criminals really have a handle on some of the deepfake video creation, I think we're going to start to see some instances of virtual kidnappings in which the victim is able to interact with the criminal, believing that it's that close relation. And this is where I'm going to talk about some policy countermeasures here in just a minute, but this is where we really need to have things like shared secrets to get past this, proof of life. And obviously these are targeting individual humans. Okay, the fifth example, I mentioned this before, Zishing. This is only something I'm speculating about right now, but I believe that this audio, video, deepfake technology will be used in the near future to spoof individuals in Zoom rooms. We've already seen Zoom bombing and other sorts of things happening, and I think it's just a matter of time before social engineers start to take this to the next level and use this to social engineer people in Zoom rooms. So again, this will be a video, audio medium, human-controlled. It'll be somebody who we're at least familiar with, most likely, possibly somebody we're close with. The interactivity will be in real time, and it'll most likely be targeting individual humans. We could see situations where targeting populations, but most likely individual humans. And then another speculative attack I've already kind of talked about is a biometric attack. Now, this is an attack against an automated system to falsely authenticate as someone else to that system. And so this is an individual automation that's being targeted. It'll likely happen in real time. It has to happen in real time for that authorization to occur. The familiarity, depending on how you view it, could be close, could be unfamiliar. Control could be any of the potential control, human, software. Text, the medium could be text, could be audio, or combinations of audio, video, and so on and so forth, depending on what the authentication mechanism it is that is attempting to be defeated. Okay, I realize that technology is advancing to defeat these attacks. There are some very impressive advances that have been made. I think just last week, Facebook announced that they had developed forensic methodology to potentially even track back deepfake videos to their sources. And so I'm not really going to argue against technology. However, I will argue for a holistic approach. And so technology is a component. However, the other part of that component has to be human-centric solutions. This can be training, this can be policy, this could be other mechanisms that are centered around the human users. And the reason I think that this is important is, first, the pace of technology, it cuts both ways. Defensive technologies will advance. However, the offensive technologies are also going to advance. They're constantly getting better as well. Second is, and this is where I have a lot of arguments with security departments, is that it's like, take phishing right now is a great example. The email filters are very, very good. You have other technologies like DMARC that can help to authenticate whether or not someone is within or outside of an organization. All very good technologies. However, if I, as a bad actor, call that target, now all of a sudden all of those phishing defense mechanisms go right out the window because we're out of band. We're not in that channel. And this is where I see synthetic media as posing a very serious threat, is when we're talking about these out-of-band communications. And as we're transitioning more and more to online work, I think these out-of-band comms are going to be much more significant. Don't really want to get into it, but one thing I do want to point out is that the data sets that these defensive technologies are trained on often do not have anti-forensic countermeasures built into the data sets. And then finally, we're also going to be dealing a lot of times with non-technical users. So if you have somebody who's advanced in age and they get a virtual kidnapping attack launched against them, and the criminals are purporting to have their grandson, granddaughter, this is probably not a very technical user, and trying to get them to use some advanced forensic deepfake audio technology, it's just not realistic. So we need simple solutions for the non-technical users. So implementing countermeasures for the enterprise or even at the individual level, what can we do? And I think this is one place where low-tech solutions can defeat these high-tech attacks. The first one I'll talk about is the shared secret policy. Now, this is something that would be especially effective against virtual kidnappings. It's somebody that you have a close relationship with. Come up with a code word or a sign-countersign sort of arrangement so that you can establish proof of life. Someone gets a phone call saying that someone has kidnapped their son, daughter, close relation. Okay, fine. We have a shared secret. Ask the person that you've kidnapped what our shared secret is. And it should be something that is not something that you often talk about. If you never talk about purple unicorns, then purple unicorn is a great shared secret to have. The next policy is the never do, what I call the never do policy. Now, when our university was being hit by a rash of these gift card scams, the director of our institute sent out this email to all of the employees at the institute. It was fantastic. It was very clear. And in that email, the director said, look, under no circumstances will I ever ask you to purchase gift cards for any reason. I will never ask you to purchase gift cards on my behalf. My secretary will never ask you to purchase gift cards on my behalf. By having that established, then when employees do receive text messages or emails or some other sort of communication purporting to come from someone in a position of authority, they're not going to have that question. They're going to know right away that these are fake, and they're going to ignore them. The next policy that I'll mention is what I'll call the multi-person authorization policy. Now, in the case of the UK Zishing attack using audio deepfake tech, having a second person there to sign off on that authorization will help cut down on the likelihood of success of those types of transfers. This can be difficult sometimes with situations or companies that are doing multiple transfers in a short amount of time, but I've actually investigated cases where $4 million have been transferred. It may be worth taking that extra minute or two to have the second person review that transfer before it's authorized. And finally, a multi-channel verification policy. You receive a phone call to wire funds to a certain account. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead and email me from the verified email that you're supposed to have. Email me the code that I need to go ahead and wire that money. So something that is in a different channel, or it's out of band from that initial attack vector. Okay, so where do I go from here? Well, I'm going to continue to flesh out this framework. Again, it's really my strong desire to create something that is usable not only for other researchers, but also for the practitioners of the community. But also for my own personal interests. I'm working with a PhD student right now, and she is beginning to look at neural signatures for detection of deepfakes in humans. So we're asking the question, are humans at some level able to detect these deepfake videos? You know, there are distortions or other things that we may be picking up on, other cues. And the key here is that humans may not be aware themselves that they're actually picking up on these cues. And so our hope is by looking at some of the electromagnetic signals that we may actually see that there are points where people are picking up on these, even if they're not consciously recognizing it. And related to that, we want to see how does familiarity influence this detectability. If someone is looking at a friend or a roommate that they know very well, as opposed to a complete stranger or opposed to somebody that they don't know very well, does this influence their ability to detect a true video from a deep fake video? And so these are also questions we're going to be asking. We're also going to be looking at this from a neuro perspective. And then finally, something I really want to start diving into, and I have to say that one of the inspirations for me in this has been the Honeyfish project. And Robbie, if you happen to watch this, please reach out to me. I'll have my email on the next slide. I would love to talk to you about that project because I'm curious if we might be able to use synthetic media against the criminals. I'm envisioning cases like honeypot Zoom rooms and other things that we can create. We've already talked about responding to gift card scammers with synthetic media as a way to combat them. So with that, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is there on the slide, and I hope you find some value to this. Thank you very much.